MTTB Music Podcast.
Ready?
Steady. Go. Well, we're getting carried away with this podcasting, malarkey.
Oh. Indeed we are. I mean, we're already ahead of where we were this time last year.
Yes. We're reversed.
Assuming we get to the end of this in one piece.
This is true, yeah. We might be recording our bits separately for the rest of the year. As we self-isolate. It's like, I've done my bit. Do you want to send me your bit? We'll just plug it together.
Yes.
Anywho, we are back, and for the first time in a long time, we're back with a proper podcast, 6 albums.
Oh, gosh. It's been a while.
Which we haven't done a 6-album one for a while.
Wow. Cracky.
Said albums are Tame Impala, The Slow Rush, Caribou, Suddenly, Frazey Ford, You Can Be the Sun, Soccer Mommy, Colour Theory, Ozzy Osbourne, Ordinary Man, and Sepultura, Quadra. Prepare to rock. However, we'll leave the rock and the guitars till later on. We'll start with the 4th album from Tame Impala, Slow Rush. We reviewed both the previous albums.
Yeah, we did, didn't we?
Yeah, certainly reviewed Lonerism and the last one, which was apparently 5 years ago, which I can't remember the title of, actually, the last one. Currents.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, 4th album, Pete. Where are we? In the Tame Impala
world. I listened to this a couple of times, and I have to say I enjoy it. It's fairly standard Tame Impala stuff. But I have to say, for me, it doesn't really quite light the taper that I think the previous album did. For me personally, but it's fairly, it is fairly standard stuff. It's quite laid back. It's quite, there's some interesting sounds and lyrics, and But for me, very sort of very standard, solid feel, but a sunnier side to the podcast for sure.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. It's an album that kind of flows really well.
Yes.
You know what I mean? You kind of put it on, and it kind of...
Yeah, it does.
It kind of...
Absolutely, yeah.
One track seamlessly...
Nicely.
Mows into the next one, stuff like that.
It's well produced.
But there are no bangers on it.
No.
There's no one track that you kind of go... Find yourself walking through the house humming.
No.
Or singing along to.
No.
And also, I missed the guitars.
Yeah, it was very electronic, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Compared to previous.
Which is obviously, we are fans of the electronic.
Yeah.
But for me, the lack of more guitar
rhythm
was noticeable,
yeah.
and it genuinely felt like something missing in the overall sound. I mean, I think you're right. I think songs like Breathe Deeper and Glimmer and stuff are, they're nice tunes, but yeah, this definitely didn't feel like an album that I would be drawn back to without forcing myself to go back to. I just kind of enjoy it while it's on, but I'm not kind of thinking this is going to be one of my albums of the year.
No, there's some tracks on there I did like. I did like Borderline.
Over the border. Not that one.
Not that one. And It Might Be Time. But there are tracks on there that I did like. But as you say, I can't sort of hum them now.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Moving on.
Bit of a slow start.
Yeah. Moving on. Actually, interestingly, Tame Impala, the only act on the podcast who we've reviewed before, really.
Yeah, it's all new stuff, isn't it? For us.
Well, actually, that's not totally true, because we actually have, I just thought, we reviewed an old Ozzy album.
Did we?
When we did one of our...
Oh, we did the O's.
Back in time themed thing. So we reviewed the first Ozzy solo album.
Yeah.
But yes, but as far as new stuff goes,
Yeah.
Tame Impala, the only band that we've reviewed a new album by in this podcast
My
before.
goodness. Do you remember we had time to do theme podcasts?
I know, God. Yeah, well, illness could be a
Yeah, indeed.
fever.
Let's see where we go with that one.
Yeah. So, Caribou, 10th album from this version of Dan Snaith, who has many other names as well, but it's the 10th album. This is a very different album to everything on the podcast, really.
Yes,
I think it's
very different.
It starts with it's weird. You start with Sister, this track, which is very kind of sparse, with the vocals very much up front, kind of raw feeling to it, and then it kind of has this distorted keyboard thing, and then slowly it starts fading away to the end of the track, and then bizarrely you go into You and I, which is like yacht rock essentially. You know, and suddenly you're thinking, all right,
Yeah.
I know where this album's going. And then in the middle it goes all fucking weird at the track before coming back to the yacht rock bit. And you're suddenly thinking, hang on a sec, what is going on here?
Yeah.
And that kind of continues throughout the rest of the record. So you've got rock, ambient, rap, disco, house, all mixed up across this record. So it's a very unpredictable record to listen to. It reminded me actually a bit like of Justin Vernon, similar kind of thing of just kind of going, you know what, let's just do a bit of that, bit of that, bit of that, bit of that, and just see what happens. Does it work? Sometimes I think it works, sometimes not so sure. But one thing this album isn't is boring.
No.
And it doesn't just wash over you. And unlike the Tame Impala album, every time I've listened to it 3 times still together now, I'm finding something new and interesting in it each time I listen to it. The standout tracks to me, I really like the opening two songs. Also quite like, Like I Loved You? God, there's a nice bit of guitar in there, nice bit of mellow vibe going on. And there's which one's the really Never Come Back? Kind of big house number.
Big house number. Yeah.
Quite like that, and also like the way it kind of ends like it started. So Cloud Song is again, it has that kind of simplicity and mellowness to it. Yeah. And it's got quite a short record, 43 minutes, but it does quite a lot in those 43 minutes. So whilst like I said, I think some of it's a bit meh.
Yeah.
Because of the stuff that isn't meh, and because of the fact that it's actually quite inventive and engaging, quite liked it.
I really like this album. For all those reasons you cited, as it doesn't flow in the same way the Tame Impala album does, but it takes a lot of left turns, and so many left turns you come back to the beginning at the end, and it's eclectic, it's noodling. It's I described it in my notes here as somewhere between Tame Impala and Hot Chip. You know, if the two bands had a baby, it would be this. It's when you get the sort of peak of Never Come Back and the big housey number in the middle, and then either side of that you've got tracks like Lime and Ravi, and even Magpie, which I quite liked. Yeah, it's that sort of distant, very sort of distant vocal. It reminded me a bit of Pet Shop Boysy, actually, that one. I really enjoyed this album. I think I often say this on the podcast. I often say, I'll listen to this one again, blah, 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 blah. But realistically, we move on and do other things. I can see this one being a grower. I can see this one being in my list at the end of the year, having gone back to it. And as you say, going back to it second, third, fourth time and finding new stuff, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely an interesting one to check out. Yes. So we now move in, speaking of mellow, we now, I suppose, move into a more mellow... I see what we're doing here. We're doing all the mellow ones, aren't we, first?
Space. Yeah, I was
building up.
I was tempted to put Sepultura in the middle of the podcast, but no, we'll
get to that.
We'll get there. So Frazey Ford or Frazey Ford, I'm not sure how.
Frazey.
No, he's
I'll go with Frazey.
Previously of the Be Good Tanyas. This is her third solo album, called You Can Be the Sun. Spelt as I just said it.
Yeah, you.
Kin.
Be.
Yeah. As in forkin.
Yeah.
Yeah. As you pretty much just said, we're kind of getting a bit mellow here, I think.
Yeah, this is very mellow, this one. I mean, it's just, again, I've described it here as solid. I'm going to have to find new adjectives this decade. Adjectives, even. A smooth, easy listening, soulful, jazzy album, but, and here's the but, it just completely washed over me, this one. It was very much, even when I had it on my earphones, it was very much background music.
Yeah.
To whatever I was thinking or doing at that particular moment. I mean, I like the title track.
Yeah.
That's all I can say in terms of pulling things out. It flows again, like the Tame Impala album, but maybe not as memorable. Yeah, it's a very nice album to have, as I say, on in the background. But I couldn't get into this. I'm sorry.
Boring for the podcast, but I have to say I kind of agree with you. Actually, there was a whole when I first put it on. The first person that sprang to mind was Norah Jones.
Yeah, yes.
Who I'm actually a big fan of.
Yes, you are.
And it had that kind of, as you say, that kind of jazzy, folk, soul-y vibe going on. So a bit of Norah Jones, a bit of Janis Joplin type thing, particularly in the vocal and delivery style. But I think you're right. It is very kind of hit and miss, and a bit doesn't really do enough to grab onto you.
No.
I mean, it starts. I quite like the start. I quite like
yeah,
Azad, and particularly You and Me. I think, which is a kind of acousticy folk type tune.
Yeah.
I think it was really, really good. And then, as you say, then he just it could be the same track for four or five tracks in a row until you get to The Kids Are Having None of It, which I think is a really good track, possibly the standout track on the album for me. And maybe even Motherfuckers, not bad either. But then again, as soon as those two tracks are gone, it then fades away again.
It really does,
and it is just, you're just kind of going, meh.
It's not offensive,
No, it's not. I mean, it's perfectly. I say you put it on, you're going to go, yeah, it's all right.
Yeah.
But it is background music.
Yeah.
Really is background music.
It's one for the dinner parties. Very much that sort of. You mentioned Norah Jones. I've never been as big a fan, but she came out around a time, the early noughties, when there was a lot of those sorts of albums.
Yes.
Like Chillax Volume 3. That sort of music. Some of it was good, like 07. Some of it was not so good. And it's sort of in that sort of category of dinner party music.
It is.
Yes.
Moving on to Soccer Mommy and Colour Theory. I did write down what this lady... Oh, there it is, yes. Sophie Allison is her actual name.
She was not born Soccer Mummy.
She was not born Soccer Mummy, no. This scored highly for me, he says, putting in a puns right at the start. It's kind of this album and the style of it hark back to when people like Liz Phair and other 90s, 80s, 90s indie chicks were about. And this falls very much into that singer-songwriter indie chick vibe. And what I really like about this album, I like this album a lot, is it's a wonderfully uplifting, upbeat album until you listen to the lyrics. Which are quite dark and quite grim. the colour. I mean, it literally the album is full of songs about impending death, depression, bullying, fear, guilt, and it's all in there. Particularly about some of her guilt to having to go. Her mom's got cancer, and the yellow is the colour of her eyes, which is possibly the standout track on the album.
Yes.
Is about that whole thing of a mom slowly dying of cancer. She's still alive, she's still got it, but her guilt of, you know, having a life and going out and doing stuff and going on tour and stuff and not being at home with a mom kind of stuff. And there's just some great lines. I mean, there's great lines throughout the album, but I picked out a couple on this, where it says, "Loving you isn't enough, you'll still be deep in the ground when it's done. I'll know the day when it comes, I'll feel the cold as they put out my sun," which is obviously very, very sweet. But the thing about, you know, the guilt bit then comes through at the end when, you know, I could lie, but it's never made me feel good. Inside I'm still so blue, can't erase the hue, it's just coloured over. Which is, you know, it's quite...
It's very happy stuff.
It is. and so there's a brilliant... I read an interview with her yesterday, and what sums it up is a brilliant quote from it. When someone's asked her about the final track, Grey Light, and said, "Why make this the last song?" And so this is the quote, and I think nothing sums up this album more or better than the lady herself. "It feels like a death, like you and everything in your world are drowning in a complete loss of hope. I wanted the album to have this inclining energy and then drop into full emptiness. This song captured a lot of things that were on the record, but fully descended into what the final part is really about. Fear, death, loss, emptiness." It's a bright, happy album.
It's a very happy album. Lyrically, it is a classic. Lyrics aside, it is a classic slice of indie pop, guitar-driven.
Yeah.
You know, it moves from that sort of guitar-driven indie through to sort of shoegazy, back to sort of proto, sort of punk guitar-driven indie pop, and it's, you know, and I think particularly from the track sort of Bloodstream through to Night Swimming. Sorry, it's very sort of that 90s feel for sure. I mean, you mentioned Yellow is the colour of her eyes, which is fantastic. Crawling Up the Walls as well as another one that sort of got me in terms of its song, its lyrics and so on. And I've managed to get through this entire review, as have you, without mentioning Blur. Which is our long-time listener Neil pointed out, it's very Blur-esque. Yeah, he enjoys it.
It is. Yeah. It is certainly early.
Yeah.
Early blurry.
Early blurry. Some might argue better blurry, but there you go.
Yeah, less blurry.
No,
Moving on. We are finishing with rock. And finishing with two of the bigger rock artists in the genre. As I said, we have covered Ozzy before. In fact, we did the last Black Sabbath album, didn't we? Just thinking about it. But that was obviously the Sabbath rather than the Oz on his own, and also with Sepultura again, one of those behemoths, though pun intended.
Them before,
no, we haven't. They are one of the larger classic metal bands that we've never actually managed to get around to until today's podcast.
I mean, both these artists, they've been around for decades collectively, haven't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you know. I mean, obviously, it's like this has been recording for 50 years.
50? I suppose it is, isn't it? Yeah. Blimey.
So anyway, but despite that, this is only the 12th studio album. It might possibly be the last studio album. Who knows? Because, you know, he's suffering from Parkinson's now. Apparently this album was made in a week, by all accounts. The plan wasn't actually planning to make an album, and then off the back of the fact that he had a hit single, which is on the Take What You Want that's stuck on the end of the album, with Post Malone.
Yeah.
He decided to get together with Duff McKagan of Guns N' Roses and Chad Smith of Red Hot Chili Peppers and Andrew Watman, who I think also produced the album, who's better known for producing people like Cardi B.
Yeah.
To make a record. So, given that it was cobbled together in a week, is it any good?
Well, now that you've said that, I actually think it's very good. Because my criticism was I felt that I just felt that it did feel rushed.
Yeah.
Genuinely. I didn't know that. And it does feel like it has been, particularly in part, it starts well, it ends well, and in the middle does feel somewhat thrown together.
Yes.
And now, of course, it's been made. If it's been allegedly made in a week, then it actually is very good. It's strong production. It starts, as I say, it starts very well. The first couple of tracks, Straight to Hell and All My Life, I like.
Yeah, classic rock.
Classic rock. Then it starts to go soft, and it goes soft all the way. It gets softer and softer throughout. And it's a shame, really, because the Elton John song
with Dame Elton John, yeah.
Dame Elton John. Who'd have thought? Who'd have put those two together? Aside, and that's a fair enough track, Ordinary Man, and as is Under the Graveyard, which is again okay. I like that one.
Yeah.
But then it sort of kind of goes into this sort of mellow. I always want to say a real love of the Beatles comes out.
Well, he is a huge Beatles fan.
I know he's a huge Beatles fan, and as is often the story, we can all credit the track "Helter Skelter" for launching Ozzy Osbourne. That comes through, not necessarily for me in the best possible way, but
yeah.
It's all right. And again, it ends well. It's a raid. And the hit.
Yes.
Right, tacked on right at the end.
Yeah, which does feel tacked on at the end.
It does feel tacked on at the end. Again, if you like Ozzy, and someone does, we were out last night, saw an Ozzy t-shirt.
We did indeed, yeah.
We should mention that in a moment, actually, shouldn't we? Before we close. So it's all right. It's all right. It's all right, Ozzy.
Yeah, I'm going to agree. I think considering that it was, pretty much cobbled together quite quickly, I think this is one of his better albums of recent years.
Yeah.
As you say, it kicks off full guns and guitars are blazing with Straight to Hell, which is just a classic piece of metal. All My Life also good, and as you say, then we do get slightly more introspective and mellow, and very introspective lyrically on Ordinary Man, clearly,
yeah.
Which is about facing death and other stuff, and it's a bit twee, but when you've heard it a couple of times, it does kind of start getting under your skin, and you find yourself kind of going, "Ordinary Man."
It's very Elton John, isn't it?
Yeah,
it is the right place for him to appear.
Yeah, actually, a good vocal performance from Mr. John as well. Actually,
yeah.
And then there's, as you say, when you go up, the album goes on, you get some more fun. So, Scary Little Green Men, for example, I quite like. It's again fun, silly, and I say it's a raid actually with Post Malone at the end. It's actually quite fun, quite a decent kind of crossover-y track.
Yeah.
In fact, a better crossover track than the actual crossover track.
Crossover, yeah.
That was a hit.
Yeah.
Which is, it's a bit fine, but it's, all things considered, I'm going to use our trademark word now, solid.
Been a lot of that.
Yeah. Right. Brazilian metal time.
Yeah.
And Sepultura, their 15th studio album.
Yep.
And this is the album, I spoke to you about this without mentioning the actual album last night. Because this is the album that I listened to in the wrong order. I had it on shuffle the first time I put it on.
Right.
And then realised that when I printed out the album track listing, that I was listening to it on shuffle. And I was suddenly wondering why the way I'd listened to it and the way I'd started writing my notes for how it started really strong was suddenly less good. I was thinking, hang on, it's the wrong track. So when I first listened to it, my opening track was actually the final track.
Ah, right.
Fear, Pain, Chaos and Suffering.
Chaos,
featuring Emily Barato, who's from another Brazilian band called Far From Alaska, quite new band.
Yes.
Who I don't actually think are metal either. I think they're a kind of a indie pop band.
Her vocal was very different. Oh, God, state the blatant obvious.
Yes. Although to be fair, that track and I'm going to bizarrely start at the end of the album rather than the beginning of the album, because both Fear, Pain, Chaos and Suffering and the previous track to it, Agony of Defeat, both actually do feature proper singing from said vocalist, aside from just growling. Which is, to be fair, growling is what we expect from this genre. This is what they are a thrash, doom, death metal band. But while that is also true, one of the things that's always been quite fascinating about Sepultura is they've always been very keen to reflect their Brazilian roots and Brazilian roots music in their sound as well. So across their career, in fact, they had an album called Roots that was very much that, and that comes through once again. I'm thinking that this album, particularly in the drumming, and this is a track that has which is the track that has the really cool almost flamenco guitar at the start. Guardians of the Earth, I think it is, and. Again, the best thing I can say about this album is it's an album that I don't think's ever boring. You have got the classic kind of and some classic kind of thrash metal bits thrown in. You got some more melodic stuff. You got some. They seem to have added kind of some orchestral kind of bits to the tunes as well. I think it's for me, it's a side 2 album rather than a side 1 album.
Yeah.
So the first few tracks, which are all fine, just kind of blended into one a bit.